Hello, and welcome to another episode of Never Go Against the Family. We're coming to you live from the University of Northern Iowa Family Business Center in Cedar Falls, Iowa. We follow family businesses and topics that help your family business sustain itself. In this episode, Dan Beenken interviews Diana Clark. Diana will speak at the virtual breakfast series event titled Addiction, Advisors, and Alliances, working together to address complex family issues. So many families struggle with addiction of some sort, and it's hard to talk about. So join us to hear Diana's take on October 17th, 2024, and keep listening to hear a preview of the conversation.
I was in my 30s when I made the decision that I was getting the Sunday night blues on Saturday morning, and I thought, I'm no longer suited to this kind of work. I had done it for 8 years
Okay.
and went back to school ultimately and got my master's in counseling, and this was the transition. Yeah.
So how did you know that that was your more
College.
preferred calling? Or that this is your more avenue, Like what would the
I
career
think you
advisor have told
have to
you?
go, yeah, I think you have to go with how do people see you? When people call you, what are they asking for? And if they're asking for that very thing that makes you effective at your job, then you have to say, maybe that's a career choice for me. And that was how it worked.
All right, so we could do a little career 101 here by saying take the part of the job that you enjoy or you feel driven and passionate about. And is that a career? And for you that was obviously.
That was. Yeah.
Okay, sweet action. Wow. Okay. So and you're focusing in I see the word family all over your website. I see it your FFI affiliation, Diana. Can you kind of share with us how like how your practice is different than others from that
Sure.
standpoint?
So our practice is really focused on providing care in life's most uncertain moments.
Okay.
So that could be in a range of expertise. That expertise could be in mental illness, that could be in substance use disorder, eating disorders, age related concerns, neurocognitive decline and dementia, and other just life transitions like retirement. So anything that occurs above the neck that is not primarily medical in nature, a member of our team has an expertise in that.
Okay. So you're well diversified across a lot of mental and substance, et cetera, types of spaces. And then why your affiliation with, like, why do you think you get pulled into FFI, or why, like, I noticed on
Because
your
we
site
do
you
have
talked.
yeah, we have an expertise in working with family business. We have an expertise in working with individuals of generational wealth. We have an expertise in what is the culture of wealth and how does that actually impact families.
Okay, how would you answer that question? What is the culture of wealth and how does that impact families? And what kind of wealth do we have to be talking about? Can you give us a number or a range or a,
Not
credit
really.
card limit?
We're a private pay. We're a private pay
Oh, I'm
organization.
sorry. Like when I meant wealth of a family, that, what is
Oh,
there?
so it needs to be somebody who isn't trying to use insurance to pay for services, is has enough resources, and that could range from somebody with a couple of $1 million all the way up, but most
Yep.
people are above that.
Okay. So it can mean as little as 5 million
Sure.
of wealth or
With
whatever
Vanessa.
accumulated amongst the
Yeah.
family. That's what
Yeah.
I meant. I didn't mean like what are your costs or something like that. I just meant when you
Right.
talk about the culture of wealth and then its impacts on the family, I was wondering, well, how wealthy does a family need to be to start to fit those characteristics?
I think that's changing over time.
Okay.
It really is.
And how so?
I think that 20 years ago, somebody with $1 million was considered a wealthy human. That is
Sure.
not considered a wealthy human anymore. That's mere minimum for retirement.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And depending on where you live, it's not nearly enough, right?
That's right.
Okay. Okay. So when you talk about the culture of wealth, I haven't heard that phrase before. What do you kind of mean by that?
What I mean is the idea that if you are consulting with somebody who has a substance use disorder and you're thinking, where are they going to find their people? It isn't going to be in a state run facility by and large. It isn't going to be with people who have no options for other resources. Their affluence needs to be addressed also in treatment.
Okay. So we can't just send them off to the state supported place because their flock isn't going to be there. And that will be one of the points that will limit their success rate within that facility type of thing.
Yes.
Okay. So they got to go hang out with Betty Ford or whatever it is and that kind of.
Wherever they would find somebody who looks like them.
Okay. Why is that important?
Because what we know is that the opposite of a substance use disorder is really not just abstinence, but it is connection. What happens when somebody becomes ill with this disorder is they cut off real, genuine authenticity, intimacy, and connection with other people. So
Okay.
if somebody walks into a treatment program and we're saying, we want you to connect, and we're not providing them a forum where they're likely to connect, then we're missing the mark.
Okay. There's a lot of science there then in terms of I appreciate you mentioning, the opposite of substance abuse isn't just abstinence. It's much farther along in the spectrum of human interaction than that. Okay. All right, that's cool. Interesting. Care in uncertain moments you mentioned earlier.
Focused care in life's most uncertain moments. Yeah.
So if you think about the family consulting that you've done, what types of uncertain moments do you see in that space?
So we see everything from parenting issues, concerns about young adults, maybe on the spectrum, how are they going to function in this world, all the way to somebody who has an eating disorder. How do we support their wellness without destroying our family?
Okay. So if I may, I would say that those are also the problems that just the general American population faces as well, correct?
100%. What
Yep.
we what intuitively we think, if somebody has resources, they're going to be less likely to have some of these disorders, when in fact the data does not support that assumption.
That
We
was
know
my next question. Can you buy your way out of these issues?
no, we can't.
So what does the research say you're in more of a prone position to have these
Some
problems?
of the research is showing that, and in part that would be because there's more time potentially. You're not necessarily up at work at 7 in the morning. You may have more resources at your disposal. The social demands of substance use may be greater, more
Yep.
social life, and potentially the absence of purpose and the lack of ability to struggle without a substance.
That's interesting. Okay, let's talk about that absence of purpose one for a minute. Um, Now that can be ultra wealthy families, of course, is like maybe the stereotype I quickly think of, but that can trickle down to lots of different levels of family wealth and family business wealth and things like that. And um, what kind of advice then, because you mentioned parenting is something that you focus on as well, or have some background in, like, if I am the young parent in a family owned business and I'm the third generation and my kids are going to be the fourth generation, what are some things I want to be cognizant of? And let's just say I'm not ultra wealthy, but I I can do about what what I want for the most part. What kinds of things do I want to be cognizant of?
If I had young children right now, and I failed at this miserably, so I'm saying the thing I would have done but didn't
Sure.
do, I would make sure that my kids understood that they are members of the community and that they all had jobs. And that might be putting the napkins on the table at 2, and it may be unloading the dishwasher at 8. But the fact is that everybody in a household is a contributory member of the organization, so that as they get older and have the capacity to do more, we aren't just saying they don't know how.
Okay. Okay. All right. So start early, like, responsibilities around the house, just like I want to think about. That you also mentioned member of the community. What did you
I
mean by that?
consider a household
Oh,
community,
okay. That's what I thought you meant. Okay.
but also the broader community.
Yeah.
Does the family, in fact, dedicate some of its time to supporting community effort?
So if you don't start early with some of those habits of what I would call household chores, for lack of a better word, it's only going to manifest itself into a teenager and an older and young adult who is going to feel those same entitlements to not have to do any of those types of things. Is that correct? Is that what you're
That's
going with?
correct. And I think we need to look at the more we do for our kids, particularly if they're able to do it for themselves, the less they do for themselves. They just do. So they don't grow stronger, they don't grow more skill based, they don't have more self esteem, because we know that self esteem is born not of praise, but of overcoming difficult hurdles. All of those things that we deprive our kids of growth and then wonder why they're struggling.
Okay. That's really cool. So this is a podcast and it's also kind of a get to know you for the breakfast session coming up in October that we have. So you just meant this might get cut, but this is like a couple things that I'm just taking from this is, we cover that with our members because I think they'll love this last 5 or so minutes that we've talked about, and now what you're talking about further here about they don't develop skills, they don't develop self-esteem, they don't develop self-reliance, et cetera, whatever, what those things all are. Those are stereotypes that, we already hear as older adults about younger generations, right? And I feel like those are the same stereotypes that every generation has said about the generation prior or coming up underneath them to some extent, maybe. But I feel like it's certainly been augmented now in the last couple generations of parenting.
50 years ago, it was our job as kids to prove our worth to our parents.
Okay.
That was just, we sat at the dinner table. How did you do in school? That was,
Yep.
we had to hustle for worth. Turn that around now, and what we're hearing from parents is that we're trying to prove our worth as parents to our children. And so they're not moving in the same direction. They're still trying to prove worth. Earlier it was to their parents, now it is to their children.
Okay. So they're squeezed in the middle of that, which isn't healthy, obviously. Um, and so is that a crux thing that you do with family businesses, is talk through this concept of making sure that kids are given tasks and responsibilities and know that they're part of a greater organization, even if it's just in the household to start with, because that's where it does start. And okay, what other kind of key areas would you say that you try to focus on with the preventive medicine, if I were to
So
call it that?
parents do less, let their kids struggle more.
Okay.
Really. Desmond Tutu had this quote that I love, which is, pain and struggle are the anvil upon which our children's character is forged, where they learn empathy and compassion.
Okay.
And I love that quote because I think as a parent, we feel like we want to save our kids from pain. We want to save our kids from struggle, when in fact, the amount we're doing that may be actually creating more susceptibility to bad coping.
And it's hard. I mean, I'm a parent of younger-ish kids. They're in elementary school. It's hard to watch them struggle or to remember that you had struggles at that age with X, Y, or Z thing, and now your first inclination as a parent is to make sure they don't experience those same X, Y, or Z issues, right? I mean, that's human nature, isn't it? You want to,
It is human nature.
okay,
Or at least it is in the last 50 years. I don't think our parents were as interested in saving us from struggle.
because it was part of the deal and everybody struggled
Everybody
and
struggled. Life was hard. You wanted your kids equipped to cope
handle
with
hard.
difficult hard.
And now life is not as hard. You know, I have a
Way.
95-year-old grandma, 94-year-old grandpa. Their version of childhood doesn't, they could never imagine the type of childhood that a lot of American kids have. Not even wealthy kids, just average
Just
kids have.
average kids.
Yeah. Life is hard. Okay. All right. And we've made that, we've over time tried to just alleviate that and get that out of the upbringing of our kids so that, okay, and in so doing we're just creating a bigger injustice, which is why they end up back in our basements or on our payroll with no job title or responsibilities, etc. Okay.
We do that
um
out of fear. We're very afraid that if we let our kids struggle with their own issues and left to their own devices, that they will fail. And they might fail. They might. But they also may learn from that failure in ways that helps them.
okay, this is really good, Diana. I can tell, I can see your ability then to be family focused with some of these concepts and things that you're talking about. You know, a couple things I saw when I was doing a little research on what you focus on was, you know, one element was called family coaching that you talked about, and right alongside that was the intervention concept.
Mhm.
How do you, you know, I don't know if we need to take those one by one, but with family coaching, you know, what do you mean by that in regards to your practice and how that looks?
Thank you. So I would couple all of these under family crisis, basically. And the
Okay.
crisis usually is my son, daughter, or husband, my sister, somebody is struggling with some kind of either transition, inflection point, and they're really falling down, or they have some kind of disorder, and the
Okay.
family doesn't know how to support them. I've told them what to do. I've cut off money. I have punished. I have given the cold shoulder. I have stopped talking. I've done all these things and nothing seems to change. What do I do? And that is where we come in. And we can do that either on a, family, full family basis where we work with all the members of the family, or we do certain points of the family, maybe the parents, maybe the kids of parents, and what the goal of either family coaching or an intervention or facilitated meetings is to get the family moving in a direction where well-being is what is central, not dysfunction. Because when somebody is not doing well, they become the central feature of a family. They do. If you have a loved one who is struggling with a opiate addiction, that becomes the central organizing theme in the family. Everybody's worried. Are they going to die? Are they going to make it? Are they going to go to treatment? Are they going to go to their meeting? And it becomes an organizing force. What our organization does that a lot of organizations don't do is we work with both ends of that equation. We support that individual getting well, and we support the other four family members, because there's at least four other people worried about their one struggle.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
support them in their way to be healthy when they love somebody who may be struggling.
Okay, let's talk about that for a little bit then. Because you mentioned, I don't know if these are the go-to actions that you find in a lot of families, but they start doing things like telling the kids what to do, giving advice, making suggestions on how they rid themselves of this either mental health issue or substance issue or whatever it is that they're facing, this crisis, as you say. And so we try to tell them what to do, which I know how that works with my kids when I try to tell them what to do. So I can only imagine that's a no-go. And then you mentioned, giving them the cold shoulder, ignoring things or silent treatment stuff, or you mentioned cutting off money, which is obviously maybe, more trending toward a family business type of scenario. So are those the things that most people go to start with?
I think families seem to go in one of two camps. One camp will be ignore the issue, put on blinders, everything is okay, and pick up the pieces in the wake of the problem. Another family becomes the let me fix it. Let me fix everything from the beginning. I'm going to anticipate every difficulty so that I'm going to make sure they stay sober. I'm going to make sure they stay well.
So they put it all on themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what you're advocating for is a third camp, which how would you call that then?
I think it is understanding that somebody really is struggling, that it is their path to struggle, and all you can do is love them in ways that promote health. Don't
Okay.
get caught up in the magic act of all I need is a new car. That's not what somebody with a substance use disorder needs. They need treatment. To not get caught up in the misdirection of what they say they need, but to stay focused on what is healthy.
That's a great point right there. I like that. You said a lot of time, too often families are going to focus on function. I assume what you're saying there is, can they just function in society? Can they live and breathe and
They pretend.
not screw up the rest of our family and that kind of thing? Pretend
They pre-
uh,
yeah.
versus well-being. Maybe talk a little bit more about that too, then, if you don't mind.
Anytime we are making adjustments to acceptability, we are actually promoting bad behavior. And let me give you an example of that.
Okay.
For instance, your 15-year-old stops setting his alarm for school because he smokes weed the night before.
Okay.
You set the alarm, you become the alarm clock. And the more you do, the less he does. And the less becomes the new normal. You have made it possible for him to sleep in late without taking responsibility for it because you've become the alarm clock.
So we become these enablers and we start setting a lower and lower bar of expectation.
That's right.
And we think we're doing that out of love,
And we
out
are.
of
We are.
right.
Not well directed love potentially, but certainly love.
Yeah, misguided as our actions might be, they're out of the right place. And so then when they don't improve, because all we're doing is enabling and whatever, we're not moving them toward well-being, but functionality. We become more frustrated probably with the end product of where they are. How does that impact things?
Well, I think it becomes the resentments build, the relationships start to deteriorate, trust withers. I think there's a lot of things that happen in the confines of a relationship when one person is well and the other person feels like they're only picking up the pieces. And I don't
Uh,
care if that's a parent or a spouse or a child. That happens everywhere.
and this podcast isn't intended to be some kind of a plug for a book that you've written, but I did read that you wrote a book, and I, of course, read the title, and that's it. And it said family right on it. Why is it a family's journey, and why is that your focus with the book?
Because while somebody might be getting numb, somebody else is getting worried. And it is often the family that is getting worried. They're the ones who are struggling with nervous disorders, anxiety, stomach ailments, headaches, because it takes a lot to love somebody who is really struggling and not being, and that person not addressing that issue. We can have enormous patience for somebody who is doing what they can do to be well, but we don't have enormous patience with people we feel like in our culture aren't doing the steps they need to.
In mental health, that's a really tough space too, because if I have knee surgery, I can go to physical therapy and I either am going or I'm not going, and I'm trying and I'm doing my exercises or I'm not doing them, right? In a mental health type of capacity, being able to showcase energy and effort and working on this is not nearly as concrete and evidential. So how do you deal with that as a family member where you think, boy, they're not doing anything to try to get better?
Well, I think
Um,
we can look at the data. The data would suggest that if they're doing the work, emotionally, they're less volatile. Mentally, they might be taking the medications that are prescribed. Physically, they're getting exercise, they're showering, they're brushing their teeth, all of those things.
okay.
Executive functioning wise, they seem like they can create a plan, follow through with a budget, or whatever else would be appropriate at whatever stage of life. And then
Mm-hmm.
relationally, their relationships are mending. That's the data points. It isn't just that, yeah, well, I'm trying. It is, how does the data stack up in those kinds of areas?
Okay. So you grab different types of things. It's not going to be how fast did they run a mile or how
Right.
well did they do on the bike today or whatever it might be. It's going to be how are they doing at creating connectivity again with those around them? How are they doing at becoming a contributing member to society type of thing? And are they making strides in that way?
Hmm.
Okay. 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 And if they're not, but they tell you they are, how do you handle that?
Then we look at, okay, your your trust seems to be evaporating with this person. Let's have a conversation with them so that they understand that there are consequences to lost trust. There are certain things we do for people that we trust and certain things we don't do for people that we don't trust.
Okay.
So, and and really make an offer like, if you are interested in working on this together, we can do that together. Rebuild
Okay.
trust. Yeah.
I'm willing to be alongside you, but I got to see that you want to be here too.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And that talk of trust and the shattering of it. Okay. Okay. Some of that is a little bit of, I don't know, maybe this is too strong of a word, but I might use the F word here. Maybe there's a little bit of a fear factoring going on there with where I'm losing trust with you. That's certainly, hopefully, plugging into their wanting to be accepted, wanting to be part of the family, knowing what it might mean to be cut off from that family, and therefore the fears that that could elicit, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Fear is powerful. Maybe the most powerful. Okay. What else can we grab from the book?
I think one of the things that I really talk about, if this is a family, let's imagine this is a family, okay? And
Yeah, I got
somebody
3
goes off
kids.
to treatment, all right? One of those kids has, unfortunately, he goes off to treatment. He says, I need to get well. If he comes back into this family without the family doing any shifting, he's coming back into an organic structure that has sinew and bone, and the odds of replaying an old pattern are really high. So what we want to make sure is, while one person in a family is getting well, the other four members of that family are doing that work too, so that the family can contain a different person on its arrival.
And so that's got to be hard in some cases if I'm looking at these other 4 fingers to be, not all families are like this, but I might be like this. I might be like, well, what the hell? I'm not the one that's screwing up here. And you send Jimmy off for treatment or because he went off the rails or whatever the issue, whatever the crisis was. Why am I the one having to adjust my lifestyle? Or why am I the one having to adjust whatever it is? So there's a what and a why there. There's a what do I have to adjust and why do I have to do it? And why should I trust that Jimmy's going to come back any better? Can you talk me through some of that
So
pushback that you
those are
get?
great questions. Those are the pushback we get all the time. I like to think the people who call me are really very interested in what can I do? Okay, so I'm starting with a different conversation. And
Okay,
we
so they're motivated because maybe they've
they
hit the
love their
bottom of the bottoms or something like that.
they love the human.
Okay.
They want to be part of the solution.
And
And
they
I
know that when they haven't been part of the solution in the past, it hasn't worked out. Would you
that's
say that
right.
too?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it hasn't worked out.
Okay.
And
So they
we
say, "What
also
do I
know,
do?"
yeah, and then they say, why me? And I regularly say, because that's what family does. That is what we do as family members. We look at
Okay.
what are the ways we can support a struggling member, and what are the ways we're willing to.
That's what a family does. I mean, it's pretty much that simple too, to some extent. It's still hard to swallow, but simple to say. So in the what do I do part of it, if we've moved past the why me, well, it's you won the lottery or whatever it is. It's the family you're in, and you want to be a healthy member of that family. That's what's required. What do I do? What are a couple of this, not telling us everything, obviously, but what are a couple of common
So
things?
yeah, let's imagine you have a child with autism spectrum disorder who acts out when you take him to the amusement park. You
Okay.
look at the amount of stimulus you're going to be providing that kiddo and say, I'm going to adjust
Okay.
our vacations to take into account that particular feature of my son
Okay. Okay.
in that
Y-
diagnosis.
So it
In
could
an
be
eating disorder diagnosis, you might stop making comments about body size and really learn and get educated about what are the messages that are helpful for somebody who struggles with an eating disorder. And for somebody with a substance use disorder, you might say, we're an alcohol-free family now. We're not having alcohol in our home.
okay. So you make
You
in
can.
some cases, some big changes, right?
Mhm.
Okay. I love that. And I'm assuming you've worked with enough families to see where that helps. And that is an enabler to get them back to a path of not only functioning, but well being, as you said
Well,
earlier.
yeah.
Okay.
I come from a family business. My grandfather and his brother in law began a real estate business in Madison, Wisconsin, and they did some development throughout Madison. And then it went down to the next generation, and the next generation could not work together. And it became one of those tragedy stories of a separation of businesses, two different real estate businesses, hurt feelings, silence among the two family members that is just now getting to be talked
Just
about.
now, as you're getting to the age that you're at, and I'm guessing a lot of the other third
This
generation.
goes back 50 years. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'm assuming the business is now, it's not in your family's ownership anymore. Or
No, although I think my cousin may in fact have the real estate, a smaller version of it, a more tailored version of that, but I think he still has a contracting business. Yeah.
okay, so you had firsthand experience and exposure to this.
As to how it can go badly.
So you might have seen your grandparents not have conversations with other family members that a normal family would have had those types of connectivities to siblings
Absolutely.
or whatever.
Holidays, people stopped getting together in bigger groups. It became, yeah, it's sad.
Okay. Absolutely, it's sad, and it's what we try to, work toward. I don't know if I could say preventing, that might be a little too strong, but we certainly try to give our families tools and ideas, best practices, advice, etc., on how to, either overcome or prevent or get out in front of different things. I mean, you could probably rattle off a stat to me real quickly on what percentage of the general population is impacted or affected directly by substance type abuse, the different disorders you cover, the mental health space. Is it 2 or 3%, or is it
No, 10% of US adults struggle with a substance use disorder. And
just
for
with
every
substance?
substance use.
That
And for
doesn't even
every
include
one of
mental health.
them, you have four other people. So let's say that would be roughly equaling 100 million people struggling with just substance use alone. We're not dealing with depression and anxiety, autism spectrum, eating disorders, all of those under. The statistics are alarming right now in the mental health space. We are seeing statistics of suicide at kids as young as 8. We're seeing growth of anxiety and depression in 12-year-olds.
Okay, and this isn't a pod about why that is, or societal or environmental aspects that play into that or whatever, but this is just meant to say it isn't as unique and uncommon as you want to think it is. And just from a pure percentage standpoint, um your likelihood of having to deal with this either with one of your kids or one of your grandkids is
Fairly high.
pretty high. I was just going to use the word high, and I didn't
Fairly
know if
high.
that's
Yeah.
wow.
I think if
Okay.
you're not dealing with this in your family, then you should consider yourself very lucky.
Okay. Yeah, and or you're ignorant to what's going on.
Or you're in denial. That
Not just a
I
river
like
in
to think
Egypt.
lucky. I'm an optimist.
Okay. All right. We'll stay positive. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. This is really great. So you were talking about your family, a couple generations before you impacted in a family business environment. So I'm guessing you draw on that to bring legitimacy with some of the family companies that you
I
work with?
do. I do draw on that because I can see where it goes wrong. And it was nothing that anybody wanted to have happen.
Sure.
It
That's a
was,
good point about it too, right? Is that it wasn't like this was what we wished for.
mm,
It just is the way it ended up,
mhm.
despite our best intentions.
And the founders' best intentions when they started the business,
Sure.
their intention was to provide a living for both their families for generations to come. That was
Yep.
their intention.
A legacy of positiveness, right?
Hmm.
Which is what every family that we have on our membership rolls and interacts with our program, that's exactly what they're doing too, is love of family. Part of that love is providing for, right? And so
Yeah.
leaving that behind is a huge part of that legacy. So if we try to end with that concept, for the podcast sake, at least, I want to leave this legacy behind, but for my family of whatever XYZ I've built. Um, a couple of ways in which you would advise that. I call him Founder Frank a lot of times, or Founder Francine, or whatever. Uh, what types of things do I want to be focused on talking about, communicating about, etc., that might not just be in the trust documents or something like that, that I want to make sure family is aware of?
Mm. I think the more we encourage communication about difficult subjects, whether those difficult subjects are religion or money or mental health or physical health, if we can provide a way to just be with people, connect, and maybe if they're struggling, sit next to them. We don't have to fix it, but just be in the presence of struggle,
Okay.
comfortable enough to say, I know this is difficult.
Okay. Start there.
Start there.
Okay. Okay. I think part of encouraging communication is being a leader in in making it happen and organizing it and showing the importance for it. I see some families where, you know, the grandfather will show up to the family meeting or the board meeting or something like that, but that's about it, right?
Not
And they're
saying anything, right?
yeah, right. Their ability to give direction, to articulate legacy or what I don't want to see happen or those, they leave a lot of that into the realm of assumption. And that's where things can often get blown up, I feel like. Okay. Thank you
Thank-
so much for your time, Diana.
Great to talk to you, Daniel.
You too. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Never Go Against the Family, a podcast produced by the University of Northern Iowa Family Business Center. You can find more information about the center, membership, and upcoming events at unifamilybusinesscenter.com. As Vito Corleone advises, never go against the family.